Welcome to Top Stories Hub. Today we've got a new story, a mystery you'll want to unravel. I've never been a fan of these dinner get-togethers, but I kept showing up just to keep the peace. Positioned a couple chairs down from where all the giggles and gossip were flowing, I watched Emily and her crew yak it up with energy. I stayed quiet as usual, catching bits and pieces while the place buzzed with laid-back chuckles and chatter. Like every other night, I did my best to fade into the wallpaper, figuring my job was to back Emily up by simply being there. Deep down, though, this gnawing loneliness weighed on me, heavier each time, something I'd been shoving aside for way too long. I kept telling myself I was there to see her happy. But inside, man, it was a mess, every burst of laughter, every little remark slicing deeper than it looked on the surface. The night rolled on like it always did, with the gang swapping tales and cracking jokes. I poked at my plate, my head drifting back to those sweeter days when Emily and I swapped dreams and secrets over meals just like this. That cozy vibe? Long gone. Now, there's this chilly vibe between us that's pretty much taken over. I tuned in close, hoping the old familiar sounds of our life might ease the ache. Instead, the evening veered into territory I'd been dreading forever. Somebody piped up, cutting through my jumbled thoughts with a casual, "So, how's married life going for you?" It sounded innocent enough, but that question ripped right through the cozy mask of our dinner. My pulse slowed, like it was gearing up for a hit I knew would wreck the shaky calm I was holding onto. Before I could even pull my brain together, Emily let out this loud, brush-off laugh that bounced around the room, then dropped the line that still stuck with me, "Oh, come on, he's basically just my roommate now." Right then, it felt like everything stopped cold. Her voice, breezy and unbothered to them, was like a harsh judgment call delivered with an audience watching. I just sat there, locked in place, her words sinking deeper every second. Her buddies snickered, nodding like it was some old, funny bit they'd heard before. The way they rolled with her cold jab left me raw and alone, like I'd turned into the punchline of a gag I never signed up for. The chatter picked back up around me, but I was fighting to keep it together. Every chuckle, every quick look between Emily and her pals, dug the knife in further. I couldn't shake the memories of all those quiet compromises, the little acts of love that used to tie us tight. But right then, it all crashed into this sour truth. The woman I'd poured my trust and heart into saw me as nothing but a nuisance crashing her space, no closeness, no care left. That dinner turned into this brutal showcase of stuff I'd guessed at but never really faced head-on. I stayed hushed, each word hitting me like a punch. My mind was spinning, piecing together how our whole deal had unraveled into this public gut punch. I kept flashing back to times I'd brushed off her growing apathy, those nights I stewed solo while she hobnobbed with the crew. Now, her offhand comment ripped the cover off what I'd been scared of all along: our marriage was just a shell, a front for this widening void. The room, buzzing with soft talk and tunes, started feeling tighter, like I couldn't catch a breath. It was like I was stuck watching some stranger's life play out, one where I didn't matter anymore. I stayed put even after the laughs faded, my brain racing to wrap around what just went down. Her words kept ringing in my head, chilling my heart with grief and shock. I thought back to all those times I'd quietly prayed for us to click again, for that old spark that used to light up our place. But sitting there, under the stark glow of that dinner table, it hit me, the hope I'd been gripping was nothing but a flimsy dream. Their carefree cackling just made the hollowness inside me scream louder. I started questioning if I'd ever really known Emily, or if I'd just missed how she'd slowly morphed into someone who'd stripped away the guy I used to be. In that aching quiet, my gut started yelling stuff I couldn't dodge anymore. I saw it clear as day: the life we'd pieced together was crumbling bit by bit, leaving me with these jagged scraps of talk and regret. I kept replaying those endless nights wondering where our love had vanished to, how our big plans had slipped into the background while daily grind and bitterness took the wheel. Knowing I'd been downgraded to just a roommate cut deep with this icy finality, and realizing she was cool with that, without even a flicker of guilt, made it sting even worse. Sitting there, the dim evening light seemed to throw a dark blanket over every happy memory I'd held on to. I felt this crushing sadness for the dude I'd hoped to become, for the life I'd pictured with Emily, full of laughs we'd share and care we'd trade. Instead, I was stuck with this heavy chest and the brutal fact that the bond we'd treasured was snipped clean ages ago. Every giggle from the table hammered home how far apart we drifted, a gap that felt impossible to bridge now. That emptiness inside ballooned, like a muted howl in the mess of a life that had gone dark out of nowhere. Every syllable bouncing around that dining room carried the heft of a goodbye I wasn't ready to voice. My gaze slid from the lively faces around me to Emily's blank, steady stare. Right then, she wasn't the vibrant gal I'd fallen for, she was a stranger who'd mastered hiding behind charm and coldness. Her grin, once my safe spot, now just screamed how small I'd become to her. I couldn't face her down right there, the truth was too fresh, the hurt too sharp. So I just sank lower in my chair, each minute dragging on like a quiet proof of a love that had turned into an empty shell. As the night stretched out, I was tangled up in regret, anger, and this deep, heavy sadness. I'd spent years trying to patch what was busted, hunting for any flicker to bring back our fading fire. But hearing that easy laughter and catching Emily swapping sly looks with her friends, it sank in, that spark was dead and gone. It felt like I was trapped in some half-awake bad dream, every second colored by the ache of what we'd lost. I craved the solid hug of knowing for sure, but all I got was this stark, stubborn truth, I wasn't the husband she'd once said she loved anymore. The rest of the night blurred by in a fog of jumbled feelings and thoughts. I sat there, numb and cut off, while the dinner rolled on like nothing happened. The clatter of forks and the hum of voices faded into background noise against the chaos storming in my skull. I knew this night was gonna flip my life upside down, a point where I couldn't pretend anymore. In that thick silence, I swore to myself, no more ducking the hurt, no more letting old ghosts lock me in a life missing real love and respect. That dinner, with all its ugly wake-up calls, was the end of one road and the start of another. Later that night, back home after that rough dinner, I plopped down alone in our quiet living room. The stillness was thick, loaded with the aftershock of Emily's cutting words and the far-off laughs still bouncing around in my head. I couldn't shake how her voice had brushed off my worth like it was nothing, just a throwaway line. Every second in that empty space reminded me how bad she'd gotten under my skin. It slammed me hard, like never before, that our love had dried up, leaving nothing but this cold, far-off vibe. I sat there, holding tight to some dumb hope that the quiet might crack with an "I'm sorry," or even a hint she felt bad. But nope, Emily was off in her own bubble, thumbing through her phone, sipping water like it was no big deal, while I grappled with the fact that nothing had shifted. Deep down, I knew she meant it all. This wasn't the woman who treasured what we had, it was someone who'd checked out of our marriage a long time ago. With every tick of the clock, the reality got tougher to shove aside. My busted-up heart made me face it, the gal I'd loved wasn't the one who'd built dreams with me or swapped secrets in the dark anymore. I tried to talk, to let all the hurt and confusion pour out, but my words just died in that heavy hush. When I finally mustered up the guts to ask why she'd tossed me aside so easy, her eyes locked on mine, half annoyed, half fed up. "Come on, Jake, it was just a joke. You're taking it way too hard," she snapped, her voice sharp and unbending. Those words, meant to shrink my feelings down, kept banging around in my head like a relentless beat. They made me second-guess everything, the times I thought we were solid, the quiet promises we'd made late at night, the laughs that felt like they were from another life now. I was stuck in a back and forth that gave me no clarity, just this sour mix of betrayal and regret. In the days after, I kept digging through every second we'd spent together, hunting for anything that'd clue me in on this growing rift. I ran that awful night over and over in my mind, looking for some sign in her voice, some shred of realness in her eyes, but all I got was this icy distance that carved me up inside. The quiet in our house was louder than any blowout fight could have been. Every corner, every chair that used to hold good times, now just sat there heavy with all the stuff we never said and the wounds we never patched. I roamed from one room to the next, feeling like some outsider in what used to be my home, like a shadow stuck facing the pieces of a love that was fading fast. Sometimes, I'd catch myself wondering if I'd totally missed the signals of her pulling away. Did I just gloss over those tiny hints, those still moments when she felt miles off even though she was right there next to me? The heaviness of her harsh words and that offhand shrug off afterward left me hollowed out and alone. I missed those times when a quick chat would lift my spirits and remind me we were still a team. Now, every word we tossed back and forth just stretched the divide wider, like we were yakking in completely different tongues. I started clocking every little shift in how she acted, every quick look that suggested something was gone, trying to puzzle out the real story behind her mask. In the thick of that lonely ache, I made up my mind not to let her words totally break me down. I swore to myself I'd dig deep for the grit to figure it all out, to hunt down traces of the guy I used to be before our love turned into this string of chilly, careless snapshots. My heart was banged up and my soul was dragging, but I held tight to this shaky dream that maybe one day the quiet would crack open into a real talk, a convo that could spill out what went sideways and maybe even patch up what got wrecked. As the night stretched longer and the silence got deafening, it hit me that staring down these brutal truths might be my only shot at clawing back who I am, at busting out from under the dark cloud of being brushed off that now ruled our life together. Even while I wrestled with the gut punch of being tossed aside, I promised myself I'd keep looking for some glimmer in the gloom, a reason to think I could one day be more than just a faded whisper in a marriage falling apart. I sat there in that dead quiet, suffocating room, my head swimming with old joys and laughs now soured by the bitter bite of her coldness. I knew those words of hers would stick around, a nagging echo of how far we drifted. But even as hopelessness tried to swallow me whole, this soft spark of stubbornness started glowing inside, a drive to get it, to mend, and to somehow stumble back to a spot where I could feel complete again. Way before that awful dinner night, I'd started picking up on this hush sneaking into our place. Every day, stuff I used to shrug off now jumped out at me like jagged bits of glass under my boots, how Emily hardly said a word over breakfast, that far-off stare she'd give when I tried to talk, and how quick she was to ditch me for her buddies, leaving me more and more cut off. It felt like this slow, unseen wall was creeping up between us, built brick by brick from years of neglect and things we never said out loud. I'd drift through our house, once so full of life, now cold and ringing with ghosts of better days. I'd think back to mornings bursting with giggles, nights where we'd swap little hopes, and those quiet times when her grin would brighten everything up. But those were few and far between now, swapped out for this growing void that sat heavy on my chest day after day. Sitting in the stillness of our living room, I'd trace back through our years together, scratching my head over when that fire that held us close fizzled out. That silence didn't just show up overnight. It slinked in slow and sneaky, bit by bit, until I couldn't pretend it wasn't there. Every room, every chair, even the blurry pics on our walls screamed out the lack of warmth and connection. I started seeing that Emily had checked out ages ago, her focus and care pointed somewhere else. I'd catch it in how she'd wave off my small tries to reach her, how she'd get lost in thoughts that didn't include me. I was like a phantom in my own pad, a quiet watcher of a life that wasn't mine anymore. As the days rolled into weeks, I got sharper at spotting the little clues of us drifting apart, the low hum of her chatting with her crew, how she'd flick her eyes to her phone like it mattered more than what I had to say, and the easy way she moved through our space without a second glance, all of it pointing to a rough reality. I was crashing in a house, sure, but it wasn't a home anymore, just an empty shell where our lives used to weave together so tight. I'd lie awake way too many nights, picking apart my part in this slow crumble. Was I too caught up in my job, too bogged down in the daily slog to see her heart slipping away? I couldn't kid myself anymore, something big had faded out, leaving just the shell of what we'd been. I'd try to stretch across that growing gap with soft words and half-hearted smiles. But every go at it felt pointless, sucked up by the huge silence that now shaped how we dealt with each other. My chest hurt knowing that no matter how many little kindnesses I threw out, they landed on ears that didn't give a damn anymore. It was a tough pill to swallow, but clear as day, Emily wasn't really in this life we'd made together anymore. That calm before the chaos was this thick, pressing weight, a fake peace hiding the storm bubbling underneath. I felt stuck, sliding slow motion toward a lonely tomorrow, where echoes of a love gone cold trailed every move I made. Each day, sun up to sundown, the blank spots in our house got heavier. I'd stand in the doorway of what used to be our safe haven, staring at walls that now seemed to laugh at the happy times we'd had. I could still hear the laughs bouncing around these rooms, the soft buzz of our late-night talks, and feel the gentle brush of Emily's hand in mine. Now, every one of those memories had a sad edge, a sharp nudge that the glow of those days was long gone. It was like I was watching something alive and bright rot away slow, breaking down into cold chunks of a love nobody remembered. That silence wasn't just a lack of noise, it was this real, thick thing filling up every inch of our place. It sank into my bones and hung around, a constant heads-up of how far apart we'd gotten. I started looking at our life as just a bunch of quiet beats that had lost all their juice. Day by day, it got plainer that Emily had checked out emotionally from what we had, and I couldn't dodge the hard fact that I was losing not just my wife, but a chunk of myself too. I'd wander those empty halls, every step bouncing back in that big nothing, feeling the crushing load of being alone that I tried so hard to push away. In the thick of that lonesome stretch, I'd grill myself on how we ended up here. Was it on me for not catching those little changes in her eyes and voice that screamed she was losing interest? Or was it just what happens when love dries up over time? That not knowing ate at me, leaving me antsy and loaded with second guesses. I'd replay the promises we'd swapped, the dreams we'd cooked up, the future we'd painted with all that hope. But now, all I had left were whispers of what could have been, a tomorrow lost to the quiet giving up of a heart that quit fighting. Sometimes, I'd scramble for some peace in that silence, hoping it'd drop a hint or a fix for the hole inside me. I'd strain for something in the soft rustle of leaves outside or the low hum of the night, but the quiet didn't hand out any comfort, just a cold slap reminding me of the gulf between us. I felt like I was sliding slow and endless into a pit of gloom, each day pulling me further from the guy I used to be. It hit me hard, the life we'd pieced together was falling apart, little by little, into these silent, hurting moments with no room left to fix anything. Standing there after all that non-stop quiet, I could feel the heft of every word we didn't say and every chance I missed to reach out to Emily. Every second in our house was a kick in the gut of what we'd lost. I'd wonder if that silence could ever break, if there was any shot at finding my voice in all that emptiness to pull me back to life. But the more I poked around, the sharper it got that what we had was buried deep under piles of not caring and neglect. In that last, clear moment, I swallowed the rough truth that this quiet before the storm wasn't just a breather, it was the final scrap of a love that had faded out long ago. With every breath, I let go of another slice of hope, getting that sometimes the only way to patch up is to cut loose what you can't ever get back. Now, standing on the edge of a tomorrow I can't quite picture, all I've got are the memories of what we were, a mixed-up weave of love, losing, and the silent sting of knowing silence can yell louder than any words ever could. Right here, this quiet before the mess is both a finish line and a starting gun, a shaky spot where I've got to rebuild who I am from the wreck of what we shared. With shaky guts, I'm gearing up for the change that's coming, knowing there's a shot at starting fresh buried in that quiet, even if it hurts like hell. This is me, a regular guy, wrestling with the slow, hushed collapse of a life that used to be warm, now just swallowed up by the hollow echo of a love that's pretty much vanished. That night, I was parked in our quiet living room, the stillness hitting me as hard as the jumble of thoughts clogging my head. Every flash of old laughs and secret promises slammed up against the cold fact that our marriage was coming undone. For the first time, I really felt how small I'd gotten and knew if I wanted to hang on to even a shred of myself, I had to pick a lane. I started hatching a plan, not out of spite, but from this deep, gnawing itch to take back who I was. I'd think back to days when I'd wake up pumped and full of point, when our place was this cozy hideout for dreams and big plans we made together. Now, the house just felt dead. Every room rang with the missing closeness and warmth that used to be us. I knew I had to bolt before it got uglier, before this quiet neglect turned into a hole I couldn't climb out of. I got to work, quietly rounding up my stuff, little bits of me like an old photo, a beat-up book I loved, the plain comfort of my own gear. Every piece I stashed away felt like a small stand, a move toward breaking free from a life that kept rubbing my nose in what I'd lost. I took my time, kept it low-key, dodging any face-offs that'd push me to jump too soon. I peeked at the lease, and when I saw it was just Emily's name on there, a shiver ran through me. The bills, the deals, all the nitty-gritty of our life together, it was all hers. That little twist, painful as it was, locked in that I had to go. I wasn't scrapping for something I couldn't win back, I was just stepping away from a life where nobody saw or gave a damn about me anymore. While I kept packing, my head was a mess of looking back and pushing forward. I'd remember those nights Emily and I mapped out a future full of laughs and wins we'd chase together. I could still see that gentle smile she'd flash when we talked about dreams we both fed. But those dreams had wilted under all the not caring and neglect, leaving just this empty ring of promises time had busted up. I kept asking myself how I'd missed the red flags, how I'd let myself turn so see-through in a life that was slipping out of my hands. That truth hit me hard, but it lit a fire in me I hadn't felt in forever. I had to get out, not because I was mad, but because I needed to track down the guy I used to be, the one with dreams, who trusted in love, and who ought to be valued. Way past midnight, with the house wrapped in this thick, suffocating quiet, I crept from room to room, stashing away my few precious things. Every sneaky move I made built up this mixed-up freedom inside me, sweet and sour all at once. It was like peeling off a coat of old regrets with each thing I packed, gearing up to dive into a hazy future where I might just find some calm again. I didn't make a big scene or throw out some tear-jerking goodbye to a wife who'd checked out ages ago. Nah, I let the night's stillness wrap around what I was doing, leaning into the aloneness that felt like my only buddy in that grim moment. Under the faint light of one lamp, I took comfort in thinking this exit might kick off the healing for scars that had been festering too long. Every second of that hushed packing gig came with flashes, some cozy and sweet, others sharp and brutal. I could still hear our old place ringing with the sound of us laughing together, every nook promising love and getting each other. Now, folding up shirts and sliding papers into bags, each motion was me waving bye to that history, quietly admitting the guy I was back then was fading out. I saw I'd been stuck in the shade of what could have been, holding tight to a life that didn't belong to me anymore. Choosing to bounce wasn't me throwing in the towel, it was a must-do move to dig up the bits of me buried under years of just taking it. As the sky started lightening, I stood smack in the living room, my couple of bags next to me, feeling my decision settle over me like a worn-in, kinda painful blanket. There was sadness, sure, but relief too, knowing I was finally grabbing the wheel of my own fate. The plan I'd kicked off was straight up and simple. I'd ditch the leftovers of a love that had dried up. And with that, I'd start the tough trek to figure out who I am again. No rage fueled my call, just a deep itch for some self-worth and a yen to break free from the choking loop of a marriage that had lost all its shine. In that lone, silent beat, I made up my mind, my tomorrow wouldn't be shaped by someone else's cold shoulder anymore. It'd stand on the shaky chance of fresh starts and my grit to respect the guy I was and the one I'm still meant to be. That night, I plunked down in the living room, my heart heavy as hell. The quiet around me was as thick and unyielding as the dark outside, every tick of the clock hammering home that I'd been crashing in a spot where I didn't fit anymore, where old laughs and soft promises had melted into the backdrop of a chilly, empty house. I could still picture how this room used to hum with love's warmth and easy talks, but now it was just the set for my low-key exit. The old armchair, that little table by the window, even the beat-up rug under me, they'd all seen the slow fade of the life I used to treasure. Every passing minute dug deeper into me, I'd turned into nothing but a quiet bystander in my own digs. I got to packing my stuff with real care. Each shirt I folded, every book I set down, it was a little nod goodbye to the man I'd been. No big dramatic send-off, no yelling or sobbing, just the steady beat of moving forward. My hands shook a bit as I wrapped up old pics and keepsakes, stuff that once hinted at a future we'd share. Now, they were just leftovers from a past that had fallen apart long ago. I could almost catch the echoes of happier times as I tucked each thing into my two roughed-up suitcases, their heft a real and heavy sign of the load I'd been lugging around too long. Out there, the night was crisp and didn't give a damn, like the world had tuned out my hurt. I slipped out the front door, no note, no heads up, just this quiet resolve that I was ditching a life where I wasn't noticed or cared about anymore. Every step on that dark pavement hit like the last dot on a long, rough chapter. The streets were dead, just the soft scrape of my shoes as I put more space between me and the house that used to be my safe spot. With each stride, I felt this blend of grief and release, a bittersweet shake-off of the ties of love that wasn't returned and pain that never got aired out. I didn't glance back as the gap widened between me and what I'd called home. The cool night breeze brushed my face, a steady nudge that the future, blurry as it was, might hold a clean slate. In that silent hike away, I stumbled on this odd freedom, a wake-up that bailing wasn't losing, but taking back who I am. I was heading into a tomorrow where I could patch up the parts of me worn thin by years of bending and hurting quiet. The road ahead was a mystery, maybe lonesome too. But it was packed with chances to start over and find myself again. As I kept walking, I ran through our old days in my head, the grins we shared, the sweet words, the soft brush of a hand that once swore forever. Now, each one carried the bite of regret and the hard truth that those times were gone for good. Emily's warmth being gone left this huge hole that even the streetlight's glow couldn't touch. I got it, the love we'd built had shriveled up ages back, leaving just the shell of what it had been. I'd turned into a ghost in the life we'd made, a shadow so dim even I could hardly spot it. The night got darker, and the street's hush matched the stillness in me. Every step pulled me further from the life of dreams we'd shared and closer to the shaky hope of what's next. I knew this walk-off was the last piece of a long, quiet breakdown, a goodbye to the past that had caged me and a step toward a future where I might just find out who I really am. In the calm of that long, solo trek, I took in both the sting of losing and the lift of starting fresh. Each foot hitting the ground was a soft shout that I was done with a life that didn't see my worth and ready to kick off new in a world where I could finally breathe free. Next morning, I woke up braced for a storm, phone blowing up, texts flying, maybe even a panicked bang on the door, but nada. That first day after I split, the quiet from Emily was overwhelming. Early on, I sat in this little, unfamiliar cafe, sipping on weak coffee while I hashed over every second in my mind. The silence had this heavy, grim feel, a gap between us that wouldn't budge. I'd figured she'd be losing it with worry or second thoughts after I took off. But all I got from her was one faint text ping, "Where you at?" It came off curious, almost bored, like I was just a hassle, not the guy she used to know. That text cut deep, not for what it said, but for how little she seemed to care. I'd slipped out without a word, and she just tossed back the same vibe. It hit me like a punch to the gut that I'd become a footnote in a life she didn't even want to share anymore, leaving me with this empty, aching sadness. I started replaying all those brushed-off moments from the last few months, how she'd shrug off my tries to talk, those quick looks with no heart in them, and the countless nights I sat there stewing in silence while she was lost in her own little bubble. Now, with her being gone weighing on me just as hard as the quiet swallowing up her replies, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd ever really mattered to her beyond just being handy to have around. All day, I kept my phone right by me, half waiting for it to blow up with texts demanding answers about rent, utilities, and the boring everyday crap that still needed sorting. But nada. The silence just hung there, bouncing back the hollowness eating at me inside. It was like she decided me being gone was no big deal, just a hiccup in her day-to-day, not some gaping hole full of lost love and old times. Every minute ticking by without a peep from her, except that one lame question, cranked up my loneliness even more. I ended up drifting through the city streets, every step hauling this sour mix of freedom and hurt. Everything around me kept chugging along like normal, not giving a damn about the mess tearing me up inside. As daylight faded into night, I started catching these slight changes in the texts that finally trickled in. At first, they were short and to the point, stuff like had I killed the bill autopay, nudges about appointments I was supposed to handle, and clipped asks for a fast chat. No warmth, no sorry, just the nuts and bolts of running a life that was suddenly down a person. I parked myself on a park bench, watching the light slip away while I scrolled through her words. Each one felt like a little jab of frost, a cold slap that the bond we used to hold dear had shrunk down to a checklist of deals. I tried digging up those days when our back and forth was full of laughs and secrets we'd spill. I could still see those nights we'd map out what's next together, the easy teasing that made even tiny moments feel big. Now, every word on my screen was scrubbed clean of feeling, just a stark rundown of chores and logistics. It was like I'd been wiped out of her everyday world. Every buzz from my phone deepened this ache, a wake-up call that the quiet between us was shouting louder than anything about how we'd lost each other. Sitting there, I faced the ugly truth: Emily wasn't missing me. She was missing how easy it was having me there to keep the daily grind humming. Her messages weren't cries for help or hints of regret, they were just pokes about duty sticking around even as our marriage fell apart. In that still moment, I got it: the silence wasn't just a lack of talk, it was her way of not caring, and I didn't fit in that anymore. The day dragged on slow, stamped with this non-stop, ringing quiet that kept shaping who I was now. I saw that even as I wrestled with the gap she'd left, I had to swallow that this silence wasn't some short-term guilt or a lead-in to fixing things. It was the last, unsaid word on a love that had been dead for ages. With every text she didn't answer and every bland reminder, I felt the final strings tying us together snap clean off. I pulled my jumbled thoughts together and started seeing that the silence wasn't something to dread. It was like a mirror showing me what I'd been too stubborn to spot: I'd been a ghost in the life we'd had. And now, without her voice, I had to face up to what I was really worth. That silence was rough and didn't budge. But in its cold, empty bounce, I caught a whisper of a tomorrow where I could finally break free and rebuild the real me. The days after that, I was stuck in this restless headspace, every hour ticking by with this creeping worry that what I'd walked away from would come knocking for its payback soon. The weight of my choice pressed down hard as I tried wrapping my head around what leaving really meant. Texts from Emily started rolling in, not just the usual quick checks on boring stuff, but with this edge of panic and irritation. Every one was a nudge that even though I'd dodged the emotional cold shoulder, I couldn't shake the practical rope still tying me to our old life. I'd sit there for hours, reading her words over and over, hunting for what she wasn't saying in those sharp little lines. Her tone flipped from chill apathy to this pressing beg, like she was racing to glue back a life that had leaned on me being there. I'd think back to nights when our talks were packed with promises and blueprints for what's ahead, when even the smallest move meant something because it came from us both caring. Now, every message was a frigid wake-up that I'd been shrunk down to just a handy tool. Each new ping stung fresh like a slap of betrayal, like the space I'd fought to put between us was now stuffed with this bitter showdown. Her words weighed on me, making me second-guess every call I'd made in our marriage. Had I missed how our tie was wearing thin bit by bit? Had I gotten so used to feeling like nothing that I never clocked her pulling back? Leaving wasn't just about logistics, it hit me emotionally too. And I felt this growing duty to deal with the mess, even if it meant facing hard stuff I'd dodged forever. In those quiet early mornings, while everyone else was clueless and snoozing, I started tallying up every little jab and every plea I'd let slide that led to this point. I'd remember nights I'd try reaching out, only getting short answers and the buzz of her phone that always trumped my voice. Now that same phone was her megaphone for demands, stuff about bills, apartment junk, even what had happened to things we'd owned together. Our talks had this deal-making vibe that left me empty, like love got swapped out for a to-do list that needed crossing off. I got it then: the fallout from our busted marriage wasn't just lonely dinners or empty nights at home. It was real and right now, tangling us up in a net of shared crap we couldn't skip. Every day, I'd gear up for the next flood of texts, for that call I knew was coming that'd make me face the guy I'd turned into. I'd tell myself splitting was about saving my own skin, a must-do to grab back the respect I'd lost. But it wasn't that clean cut. I couldn't shake the blame for the ripple effects popping up all around me. Every call I didn't pick up and every short text from Emily felt like it was begging for answers I wasn't ready to spit out, scared it'd drag me back to a past I'd been dying to ditch. I started seeing the fallout wasn't just out there, it was carved into me, a lasting mark of a love that had crumbled way before I finally manned up to walk off. I'd spend sleepless nights wrestling with what I'd kicked off. In those quiet stretches, I'd wonder if I'd picked right, if maybe this mess I was in was just what I paid to get my worth back. The talks we'd had, the plans we'd dreamed up, they all caved under what was real now. I knew dodging this fallout wasn't an option. I figured out healing meant not just taking on the practical load of splitting, but facing down the heart scars left behind too. Every second ticking by, I toughened up to own my chunk of how our whole deal fell apart, even while I grieved losing something that used to light up my world. Now, sitting here with the quiet and this steady drip of reminders that the past ain't ever really gone, I get that dealing with the fallout means owning every bruise, every screw-up, and every flop that got me here. I've learned no getaway comes free, and the path to patching up is built on swallowing tough truths. Right now, I'm steeling myself for whatever's next, dead set on tackling this head-on so one day I can maybe let go of the grudge against Emily and me, and build a life that's about hope and starting over, not looking back. I rolled up to this little, hushed coffee shop with a mix of nerves and grit. The late afternoon sun slipped through the windows, throwing gentle shadows across the scratched-up wooden tables and cozy chairs. I'd agreed to meet Emily somewhere neutral, hoping this chill spot might let me finally face down the wreck of our marriage. When I nudged the door open, a soft bell jingled, and I felt every pair of eyes flick my way for a sec before going back to their own chatter. I snagged a table by the window, where the low hum of the coffee maker and the soft buzz of voices set this heavy mood that fit me just right. I waited, heart thumping with all this unsure mess, while flashes of our good days danced in my head. I could still see when Emily's grin would brighten everything up and her laugh was like a tune filling our place with warmth. Now, those bits were stained with the hurt of her betrayal and coldness. And I couldn't shake wondering if there was any way back from this pain. After what felt like forever, Emily showed up. Her face had this unsure look that didn't spill much, no sign of the bold woman I used to know. As she got closer, I caught her eyes digging into mine, hunting for something I wasn't sure I could give, some understanding, a bit of sorry, or maybe a flicker of the old spark we'd had once. We tipped our heads at each other, a stiff little nod that felt more like a business deal than anything friendly. Emily eased into the seat across from me, and for a beat, the quiet between us was loaded with stuff we weren't saying in old hurts that wouldn't quit. I studied her face, fishing for some clue about what she was feeling. "I think you blew it out of proportion," she started, her voice soft, like she was dipping a toe in before jumping all in. "I didn't mean it that night." Her words came out shaky and low, missing the guts I'd figured she'd bring to fix what she'd smashed. My throat tightened up, that echo of her brushing me off in front of her crew still slicing deep. I leaned in, hands locked tight on the table, and shot back with a voice wobbling between grief and grit, "You don't walk out on a marriage over one dumb line, Emily." I bailed 'cause I figured out I'd already checked out. My words weren't fancy, but they hauled the weight of years feeling like a nobody, unloved, unimportant. The space between us got thick as she chewed on what I'd said. I could see her eyes wrestling, part regret, part pushback, maybe a splash of sadness. But instead of the sorry I'd been crossing my fingers for, I just felt that icy gap that had snuck in where our fire used to burn. Our talk hung there, wobbly and rough, for what felt like forever. The coffee shop's hum faded out, trapping us in this tight knot of strain where every tick dragged memories of good days and hard wake-ups. I could almost catch the sound of old laughs and feel the glow of times past, but now they were sour with the raw truth of where we'd landed. Emily's next bit came slow and careful. "I never pictured you'd split without at least talking it out first." It was like she was clutching at some thin thread of hope that one chat could patch our marriage, a thread I'd long let go of. I shook my head, slow, eyes glued to the coffee swirls in my mug. "Talking ain't fixing what's done," I told her. "I tried getting through, but you were always off somewhere else, even sitting right here." Her gaze dropped, and something, maybe a flicker of guilt or a light bulb, crossed her face, but it vanished fast. The quiet after that hit like a roar, stuffed with heavy truths neither of us wanted to spit out loud. Right then, it clicked, this sit-down wasn't about rewinding time, it was about owning it. I'd come to face down years of being ignored. And now, across from Emily, I got that we were both stuck in a love that had lost its road. The coffee shop, with its simple setup and soft buzz of life, was the backdrop for our last stab at making sense of it all, a stab as shaky as any dream we'd ever had about moving on clean, no grudges or what-ifs. I lifted my eyes to hers, laying it out slow and straight, "We're at a fork, Emily. I left, 'cause I couldn't keep living where I didn't even show up on your radar. You say it wasn't on purpose, but those words, and how you dropped them, flipped everything for me." Her eyes got shiny with tears she didn't let fall, and she breathed out, "I'm sorry, Jake." That quiet sorry hung there between us, ringing soft but real. It couldn't glue the past back together, but it was something, a frail nod to the pain that had piled up over time. As we wrapped up, the clatter of cups and far-off voices crept back in, a little nudge that life kept rolling past our heartbreak. We split from the coffee shop without any big scenes, just this mutual get-it that we'd closed the book on a partnership that used to promise so much. Walking off from that table, I carried this deep ache but also a cautious lift, knowing this was the pivot where I'd start piecing my life back together from the hushed rubble of what we'd had, taking in the tough fact that some love tales just fade out soft, leaving whispers of what could have been. One last time, I sat in the stillness of our old living room, soaking in every bit I could, even though my chest hurt with the dead-sure knowledge that nothing was bringing back what we'd lost. The washed-out shades of the peeling wallpaper, the creak I knew by heart from the wood floor, the faint drone of the fridge, they all murmured about a life that once sparkled with hope and laughs. Now, every noise and shadow just screamed endings. I took my time walking through the place that had held our big dreams, each step a last goodbye to yesterday. I stopped by the window, staring out as night draped the city dark, wondering if the stars up there were watching this quiet end to a chunk of my life that had eaten up my heart for so long. Inside, I was a mess of sadness and ease, flipping through all the highs and lows we'd lived together. I could still feel how Emily used to grab my hand soft when things got rough, that warm grin swearing we'd have a future full of chances. Those days felt like far-off echoes now, dreams half-remembered, slipping through my hands like sand. I couldn't keep kidding myself about a love that had fizzled into dull routine. Instead, I let it sink in that our chapter was done. And with that came this sharp, clear need to let it go so I could find me again. My thoughts wandered back to that brutal dinner, the mean laughs that locked in my fate and the gut kick of realizing I'd shrunk to just a roommate in a marriage that had lost its juice ages ago. Every little thing in the room clung to a memory, a leftover from when our lives tangled up with hope and secrets we'd share. I dragged my fingers along the coffee table's edge, feeling the beat-up wood under my skin. And right then, it hit me, the stuff from our past you could touch was all that was left. Those things stood there, mute watchers to how our trust and closeness wore down slow, the quiet crash of a bond that used to make every day feel like a party. I couldn't dodge the big hurt swelling inside me. But right there in the thick of that pain, a tiny flicker of stubbornness started warming up. I knew this last see-ya wasn't me giving up, it was my first move to dig out the guy I'd lost in the mess of our busted-up marriage. I scooped up the final bits, a framed picture, a beat-up poetry book, a scarf still holding a whiff of her scent, and tucked them neat into a box. Every piece was a chunk of a life that used to pop with color, now headed for storage with all my love and second guesses. With each thing I packed away, I felt the tug of losing but also this kick of breaking free. I muttered a soft so long to the dude I'd been, figuring the days ahead promised a fresh start, even if it was wrapped in fog and being on my own. I stepped out into the chilly night and shut the door behind me. That little click bounced in the stillness like the last breath of a dream I'd let slip away. Out there, the world didn't care about my ache, streetlights blinked, cars rolled past, and the city's low hum kept going like nothing had shifted. Right then, I got it, our marriage dying wasn't my whole life kaput. It was just a rough but needed goodbye to a stretch that had shaped me too long. I took it slow, walking away, every step proof of the mixed-up relief in letting go. Off in the distance, a night breeze whispered soft, hauling hints of something new. I leaned into the lonesome, knowing this quiet farewell held a spark of a tomorrow ready to grow. My heart, loaded with old times and sadness, started thumping with a careful kind of hope as I moved into the dark unknown. I saw I was finally loose from a love that had been choking me out. And that freedom handed me the muscle to piece my life back together, bit by bit. Every stride from that one special house was a stride toward finding me again, a shot at loving down the line, not 'cause I had to or was scared, but 'cause it'd be real, straight up who I'm supposed to be. As I melted into the night, I lugged the past's lessons and the hope that even in this final adios, there could be a hush of starting over. Here I am, standing at the edge of my new kickoff, where every breath and shuffle murmurs about an end and a peek at tomorrow. The days since that last goodbye have crawled by, sprinkled with still moments of thinking back and a slow bloom of feeling free. I'm crashing in a simple apartment now, pretty bare, but it's got this quiet vibe of possibility, like a blank page itching for a new story. Every morning, as dawn sneaks through the window, I catch myself running through the tough echoes of what was Emily's frosty tone, that sting of her laugh brushing me off at a dinner table where we used to dream together, and the thick silence after I walked out. But as the light heats up, so does this steady sureness in me that I've gotta grab the closure I've been chasing. I've burned hours picking through memories, not to hang on to what's gone, but to get how every high and low stitched together who I am now. I've figured out closure ain't something someone else drops on you with a sorry or a forced my bad. It's a road I've gotta hike myself. Alone in my new spot, I started scribbling, putting ink to paper to shake off yesterday's ghosts. I wrote down the laughs we'd shared, those soft close times that turned into bitter keepsakes, even the tears I'd let fall quiet. With every line, the load of my past got lighter, swapped out for this solid beat of self-worth and the truth that I'm not just some tag-along nobody. Changing up hasn't been all smooth sailing. Some nights, the sting of being ditched creeps into my sleep, and the empty feel of a house we used to share bounces around every blank corner. But in those rough patches, I find this little jolt of grit pushing me to get back up. I've learned every finish line's got the start of something new tucked inside, a shot at building a life lit up by what I've been through, not dragged down by old could-be beams. I've taken to long strolls in the crisp evening air, letting my steps melt away leftover hurt and bring in the easy rhythm of a tomorrow without all that baggage. I'm meeting folks now with wide-open eyes and a real heart, bit by bit finding again the simple kick of a good talk, a shared chuckle, and the random niceness that tells me I'm not solo. Each day, I claw back a little more of the guy I was before I got swallowed up in a marriage that left me feeling like I didn't exist. I've seen the closure I was after wasn't something Emily could hand over. It's something I've gotta earn from inside. Every smile that didn't come back and every hushed goodbye's now proof of the strength I've dug up in the pit of my sadness. Standing here as the day's light fades, I know healing's still a work in progress. The cuts might still smart under the skin, and the bits of a love that used to be will stick around. But those echoes don't own me anymore. I'm picking to see them as chunks of a bigger tale, one about bouncing back, figuring myself out, and chasing down some steady calm. I've learned real closure ain't in the done deal of a goodbye, it's in owning what's behind me and the guts to grab a future I make for myself. Today, I'm stepping up with a quiet chill, knowing every end pops out a chance for a new start, and I'm finally free to live the life I was always cut out for. That's all for today's tale on Top Stories Hub. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and tell me what you'd like to see next.